Now, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I'm very happy to greet you. My name is Alexandra Kanjo-Mrčela, and I'm greeting you from sunny Ljubljana, University of Ljubljana in Slovenia. And I'm really glad that we have this opportunity to be together at this session. This plenary session will tackle the problem, the topic of skills. The topic has always been very important in discussion on the education and labor market, and it is still very much present in our analysis of how to act at the universities in order to prepare our students in the best way to enter the labor market that is changing very fast. It is very important for us to set a right balance of skill formation in doctoral education that will, in the best way, meet expectations and needs of different actors, of doctoral students themselves, of doctoral students who are now ambitious to make their careers in both academia and outside academia, of employers at the labor market, but also in a broader society. As we heard in the keynote speech, we are doing something for public good, so we should listen to this broader society and understand which skills are needed for our students to be met, these goals that comes from our surrounding. As you will see from the three presentations that we will hear today, that is not an easy task. So skills that are certainly crucial for doctoral education are those that support excellent research. But in the last few decades now, we are more and more aware that in order to perform the best research and then to perform in the best way in their careers, PhD candidates and then holders should have some set of skills that are different but supporting their scientific skills, that is generic knowledge, transferable skills, that might be crucial for meeting challenges that we are already aware of, but also those that we are not still aware of or we might be surprised by, as for example now in the situation of COVID pandemics. So in order to discuss really in the best possible way, I will invite now our three speakers to give us some basis for this discussion, but let me first introduce them. So today we have with us three extremely knowledgeable people for this topic. First is Professor Hans-Joachim Bungartz. He's professor of informatics and mathematics at Technical University Munich and chair of scientific computing at this university informatics department. After having earned degrees in mathematics and informatics from TUM, he became associated professor of mathematics at the University of Augsburg, then full professor of informatics at the University of Stuttgart, and returned to TUM in 2005. Since 2013, he has been both Dean of Informatics and Graduate Dean with responsibility of doctoral education. Dr. Bungartz has served on various editorial, advisory, and review boards. From 2011 to 2020, he was chairman of the board of the German Research and Education Network. Furthermore, he is a board member of Leibniz Supercomputing Center. In 2016, he joined the steering committee of EUA CDE, and his research interests are where scientific computing, computational science, and supercomputing meet. For example, he was a coordinator of DFG's priority program SPEXA, Software for Scale Computing. Dr. Neda Bebiroglu is scientific advisor and coordinator at the Observatory of Research and Scientific Careers at the Fonds de la Recherche Scientifique in Belgium. Her research examines factors that shape the career pathways of researchers. Her current project include a longitudinal study of doctorate holders from the French community of Belgium and a study of the added value of a doctorate for non-academic employers. Dr. Babiriglu served as a member of the expert group for the USAID Global Science Forum on reducing precarity of research careers. She completed postdoctoral research positions at King's College London, at Université Catholique de Louvain, and she holds a PhD in child study and human development from Tufts University, Massachusetts, a master's degree in applied psychology from the New York University, and BA in psychology from Boğaziçi University in Turkey. Professor Rosemary Dean is Emerita Professor of Higher Education Management, School of Business and Management, and Doctoral School Senior Researcher, Royal Holloway. At Royal Holloway, she was also a Dean of History and Social Science, Vice Principal Education, Vice Principal Teaching Innovation, Equality and Diversity, Doctoral School Dean, Doctoral School Director. She was also Fellow of UK Academy of Social Sciences since 2006, Professor of Education Research, Dean of Social Sciences, and Graduate School Director at Lancaster University, Professor of Education at Faculty of Social Sciences and Law, Postgraduate Dean, and Faculty Research Director, all at Bristol University. Currently, she is co-editor of Higher Education, OBA Services to Higher Education and Social Science, Chair of UK Council for Graduate Education, and currently Chair of Thrifty Sociological Review Foundation, and her research covers higher education policy, organizations, governance, management, leadership, managerialism, inequality in education settings, and doctoral education. So, I said something about our eminent speakers, and I will now ask them to give their presentations. They have plenty to say, but I will ask them to say that in only 10 minutes each. Then this will be followed by a very short round of explanatory of some questions directly directed to their presentations, but we will, after all three presentations, have a round of discussions about the presentations and about the topic. So I will firstly ask Professor Hans-Joachim Burgans to start. Hans, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Alexandra, for this nice introduction, and I promise at least to try to keep time discipline. So I want to today to share a little bit with you first what we are doing at my institution, at my graduate school in Munich, and then second, share a couple of general remarks and thoughts on the skill training issue. So just a few facts on TUM Graduate School. So it has been established in 2009, is the largest of its kind in Germany. We have an automatic membership, so which means all our doctoral candidates are really members of TUM Graduate School. And interesting is probably the number of members we have currently. So that's roughly 8,500. And this shows that having such kind of a crowd of doctoral candidates, whenever you think about making something mandatory for everyone, this is immediately also a kind of a logistic endeavor you start here. So our model for doctoral education is based on 5 layers. So the most important one and the foundation, of course, is the individual research doctoral candidates do at their group, at their institute. Then we have a very small amount of subject-related training, a considerable amount of but complementary transferable skills training. We have an international research phase, and at the end then also a career support. If you look at the goals on the left-hand side, you clearly see that these kind of transferable issues are actually in the DNA of our graduate school. So there's international, interdisciplinary, transferable, career orientation. All these things are of course, topics we would like to support with what we are doing with our training. Now, having a bit closer look at the transferable skills training, one could ask, what is it all about? So there are two different things. Of course, we have a standard program of recurring courses, basically every semester or every year. So things like self-management, project management, time management. And then there are changing topics. Every semester we have a specific semester topic. For example, for the upcoming winter term, it is new work and the digital age, getting ready for the future's academic and business world. And then we have always a couple of courses that are specifically designed for this theme. They might come back if they are very successful, but maybe they are only present then in this semester. Concerning time organization, we actually subdivided in two parts. So roughly for the first 2 years, we focus on transferable skills and skills that support the doctoral research phase itself. So for example, communication skills and methodological competence and so on, self-management. So that's the green part. And in the second half of a typical doctoral project, let's say year 3 and 4, then we turn to a more career-oriented program. And then candidates can either select something from each pillar, or they can say, well, I already know that I would like to go in this or that direction. And then they can specifically focus on a specific track. And we have 3 main tracks. Of course, there is more differentiation, but we have 3 main tracks. Number 1 is science and research. So for those who are aiming at going for an academic or scientific career. Then we have entrepreneurship and startups for those who would like to form their own company. And we have, of course, the important branch of business and industry for those who would like to continue their career then in an industrial environment. And of course, there are a couple of courses we offer every semester, and roughly the half in the meantime also is in English, since, as you have seen on the second slide, our international population in the doctoral cohort is a bit less than 1/3 currently. So I don't mention here all the topics. I mean, these are things which you can find at different places. We just try to make this kind of an order that people can really get some guidance if they would like to go into a specific direction, but they can also make it in a more broad way if they would like to just get a glimpse at different possibilities. Okay, and that was the first part, what we are doing. And for the remaining time, I would like to some extent prepare a bit the discussion and share some reflections with you. So as for my country, for Germany, transferable skills have always been relatively important. And one reason is that there is actually a broad job market for holders of a doctorate in Germany. And this holds for basically all fields, also in the humanities, publishing houses, for example, or media companies. They typically also hire people with a doctorate, but technology companies, at least the classical ones. So I'm probably not speaking that much of Google now, but if you look at the automotive or the classical mechanical engineering industry, then of course doctorates are quite familiar there. So this also has to do with the mandate of technical universities, which was always not that much to create Nobel Prizes, but which was much more to secure the basis of industry and economy. And this also is reflected in what people would like to do. So if you look at what our majority of doctoral candidates in technical fields, for example, wants to do afterwards when they begin their PhD, then something between 80 and 90% declare that they do not want to go into science or research, but they really want to make this doctoral experience as a preparation for an industrial career, and in particular, of course, for a leadership position afterwards in industry. So in former times, like many things, this was more implicitly. So as you probably know, PhD, at least in the STEM field, typically happens with an employment as a research and teaching assistant, and there's a broad portfolio of things you have to do. And this was just kind of training and learning on the job. And after these 4 or 5 years, people were considered to just have these skills they needed. And nowadays, this happens, of course, in a bit more explicit way with courses and with special formats. And there I'm already on my last slide. So I think the core questions in this topic are, should we make it mandatory, and how much is a healthy amount? And there are different issues when you want to come to an answer to these questions. The first one is maybe a very primitive one, but there's a cost issue, of course. If you have 8,500 candidates and if you want them all to take a specific training, this is an organizational and, of course, also a financial endeavor. Then there is the acceptance issue. We have seen in the survey that a lot of things are considered by all of us to be high priority, but you cannot declare everything that is high priority to a mandatory one or offer something for everyone. But there is also a fundamental issue, and I would not see this as an argument against transferable skills, but something one has to keep in mind nevertheless. So despite the fact that we speak that much of transferable skills and preparation of career, we have to see that the essence of a doctorate are still science and research and not project management or communication. So the challenge is that we find a healthy balance between the two very extreme positions of an esoteric, self-centered science cosmos on the one hand, so the ivory tower, and on the other hand, a utilitarian and purpose-driven a doctorate must prepare for on the other hand. So I don't think that it is a good idea to ask people from industry or from society or from wherever, what do your people need? And then try to map this into a doctoral education. So it must be on a more abstract and on a higher bird's perspective, and also keep the long-term perspective in mind. But because typically, even if you change the sector, even if you go to industry, what people praise there is not that much specific knowledge, but it's the way of thinking, the way of solving problems. And this is, of course, something you still learn in your doctoral endeavor and not that much through the transferable skills. So we need them. They are very important, but we should not exaggerate and we should keep a healthy balance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hans, both for the both parts of the presentation, informative one and the substantial one, this discussional one, and for being on time. We said that I will take consideration and give you 2 minutes note, but it was not necessary in your case. Thank you very, very much. I'm giving some time for questions and answers. Dear participants, there is here on your left side question mark for writing down your questions and answers. But if you want to ask something now and later in the discussion, you have the possibility to unmute yourself and broadcast your question as well. So please let us know what you would like to do. I'm going through the participants and seeing no wish to ask questions yet, but there is one question, Hans, for you here. It is obligatory for the students to choose.
To choose a track, no, it is not obligatory. As I said, so some people exactly know what they want to do, and for those we have also the possibility to go deeply into one track. But many people don't know what they want to do, in particular for the entrepreneurial field. A lot of people have heard about founding their company, becoming rich, and this is a nice thing, but they don't have a very good idea. And therefore, we offer also the opportunity just to dive into that in one course or in one format or in one business plan thing or whatever, but not going deeper into it, because we also want to offer the possibility that the direction is still looked for and is still to be found during the doctoral phase.
Thank you, Hans. As we now don't, there is another one. No, that is. Oh, yes.
So I have to click on the show more to see.
Yeah, the fundamental case.
Yeah, this is a case that employers outside academia actually expect those competencies as being available in doctorate graduates implicitly, and so I return specimen. Yes, of course, but I think the expectations from outside academia are sometimes a bit strange. I always tell one very brief story. When I was in Stuttgart, there was a human resources responsible person from Bosch, and he blamed universities in Germany. Why you are not following faster on the bachelor and master track? Why are you so conservative and sticking to your old diploma? People are far too old. 5 years later, there was a similar discussion ground, and the same person blamed the universities. Why have you gone so quickly to bachelor and master? These people we get are not mature. Why didn't you fight for your so well-established diploma scheme? And this shows me that these so-called stakeholders outside have sometimes, not always, but sometimes a short-term perspective. And one has to be aware of that. We have to talk to them, of course, we have to listen, but we should not follow everything without thinking about, because there are a lot of things that are only from today's needs and that do not have this long-term perspective.
Thank you, Hans. Now with this nice thought on academic autonomy, I would ask you to turn off now your camera and ask Neda to turn it on and to start with her presentation. Neda will present us some of her research, results of her research. Neda, the floor is yours. Unmute yourself, Neda. Unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay, I'm restarting. Thank you, Alexandra, for the introduction. And thank you, EUA, for the invitation. It's a true honor for me to be here today to discuss this important topic with you. My intervention will focus on the perspectives of doctorate holders and employers to get insight into the skills training. As we all know, there's a need to transform doctoral education from being the training of academics to the training of science professionals. And one way to do that is through transferable skills, which include generic skills that are transferable between context, situations, and tasks. Therefore, reinforcing doctoral training on transferable skills has been high on agenda for policymakers and scholars alike. However, we still have to answer two questions. The first one is, which transferable skills should be targeted to best prepare early career researchers? And two is, which experiences can support early career researchers to develop these skills? So based on data coming from doctorate holders and non-academic employers, I will try to answer these two questions. So let's go on to question number one, which transferable skills should be targeted? We will first look into doctorate holders' perspective. I don't know if you can see my slide changed, because for me it hasn't changed.
We can see it.
Okay, so I don't know. Okay. All right. So in study one, our data is coming from the Future of PhD Holders study. We have 2,055 doctorate holders coming from all French-speaking universities of Belgium. We have 42.8% of them are female, coming from all research fields: exact and natural sciences, social sciences and humanities, life and health sciences. This is a relatively young cohort. They have have received their PhDs between 2012 and 2018. On average, they are 35 years old, mostly coming from Belgium, but we have a nice diversity in our sample, and 38.8% indicated to work outside of Belgium at the time of the survey. So we were first interested in their acquired skills. So we asked them to rank from 1, not at all, to 5, very much, to what extent they have acquired a set of 12 skills that you see on the right panel of the screen. So these skills are coming from an OECD survey and tab into 5 categories: research skills and technical expertise, general management skills, working with others, personal effectiveness, and communication skills. Then we asked them a basic question: are you using these skills at your current job? And the answers were yes or no. So then we wanted to understand the match and mismatch between the skills that they have acquired and the skills they were using as part of their jobs. So this web diagram depicts the proportion of PhD holders reported having acquired a skill in purple and using it as part of their job in blue. So when we look at this diagram, we realize that the biggest gap concerns collaboration and teamwork skills. We have about 50% of PhD holders who told us that they have acquired it, and over 90% reported to use it as part of their jobs. Then we have social skills and multicultural competency, business skills, communication skills, and project management. So then we thought perhaps we won't find the same pattern for those who work in university and those who work outside of university. So that's exactly what we did. We separated our sample into 2. So on the left, you see those who work in university, and on the right, you see those who work outside of university. So when we look at these 2 diagrams, we realize that the patterns of mismatch and match are very similar. So independent of their sector of employment, they need collaboration and teamwork skills, social skills, communication skills, and project management skills. So then we thought perhaps this is just a perception coming from PhD holders, but if we ask it to non-academic employers, we'll have a different perspective. So we conducted this year a study that we called Recruiting Talents, and we asked the added value of the doctoral degree for non-academic employers. And it's a really recent survey. We closed our survey at the end of July. So in our sample, we have 614 non-academic employers. 70% of them are male. Most of them are supervisors and directors because we really targeted high-profile CEOs, etc. 39.7% of them have doctoral degrees themselves. Most of them have PhD in their staff, and they represent a wide range of sectors. So we asked employers, what are the 6 most important skills you look for in candidates for a position that could be occupied by a PhD holder or a person with a master's degree? And number 1 hit was scientific and technical expertise. Then we have collaboration and teamwork, creativity and innovation, project management, research skills and methods, and initiative and autonomy. So collaboration and teamwork and project management have arrows next to them because these were the skills that were perceived as not acquired by a high proportion of PhD holders. Okay. All right. Then we asked non-academic employers how satisfied they were with the skills of PhD holders working in their organization. And it was on a scale of 1 to 4, 1 very dissatisfied to 4 very satisfied. So when I look at the results, there are 2 good news. On average, non-academic employers are quite satisfied with the skills of PhD holders because we have 2.01. And they are highly satisfied with their technical skills, as you can see, scientific and technical expertise and research skills and methods. However, for those who are ranked lower than average, we can think that employers think there's room for improvement. And we have 2 skills that need improvement. Here, we have collaboration and teamwork and project management. So coming back to our first question, which transferable skills should be targeted to best prepare early career researchers? We think that at the intersection of what PhD holders perceive they have not acquired and what non-academic employers perceive there is room for improvement, we have 2 specific skills, collaboration and teamwork and project management. So we think that these skills can be prioritized. Then we have our second question. Which experiences can support early career researchers to develop these skills? Now, there are various ways in which these skills may be acquired that does not involve a classroom learning. I completely agree with Alistair's conclusion yesterday about collaborative models. We need collaborations at universities, encouraging, initiating, enhancing collaborations at various levels is hugely important. It doesn't have to be inter-country. It can be inter-project or inter-lab. These experiences will help PhD holders to acquire collaboration and teamwork skills, but also increase their social skills and increase their professional network, hugely important for their job transition. Giving time to early career researchers for career development activities and transferable skills training is really important. We can also give them more responsibilities for supervision and project management. For instance, they can start supervising junior researchers. Informing early career researchers on transferable skills training. So problem-based, project-based, structural skills training remain important. Another thing that I wanted to emphasize was transferable skills awareness. We may have postdocs who have experience managing junior researchers who will tell that they don't have team management skills. And we should make them more aware of possible career pathways. Half of our sample of PhD holders told us that they did not know the careers that they could aspire to after getting their degrees. One thing that's really important and goes really well with the EUA vision of universities without walls is to open up universities, reinforcing bridges between universities and non-academic sectors. As part of our survey, we also did qualitative interviews with employers, and they are very open to collaborate with universities. We can invite employers to participate in university events, research presentations, or mentorship programs. Integrating internships within doctoral and postdoctoral programs or work-based learning opportunities are also important. And in our sample, 74% of non-academic employers were in favor of internships and 55% in favor of work-based learning opportunities. So in short, we think that a mixture of interventions are necessary to support early career researchers. And these interventions are not only important for PhDs entering the non-academic labor market, but also for those who stay in academia. I will just finish with some final thoughts. I think that we need to ask the right questions. As Hans said, the right question is not what do the non-academic employers want, but what skills do we want PhD holders to have in order to address future challenges and needs? What will they need in 5 years or 10 years? And I think that we need to question also our assumptions when it comes to skills needs. We tend to think of it very dichotomously. We think about diverging skills needs, but we say, what do the non-academic employers want? What do the academic employers want? But what if all employers, non-academic or academic, want the same set of skills? And what if all PhD holders, those who stay in academia or those who leave academia, need the same set of skills? And I think that as we have more evidence coming from different countries, we may see that there are maybe more convergences than divergences. Thank you for listening. Alexandra, we cannot hear you.
Sorry, I was not interrupting by giving you 2 minutes notes, but because you were also you passed your time just for 2 minutes, so it's okay. In hope that we don't have any immediate questions, because we will have a lot of time for discussion after the presentation, and we don't still have questions, I will ask Rosemary to take over and have her presentation. Rosemary is here and presentation is here, and Rosemary, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alessandra, for your invitation. So what I'm going to talk about is largely transversal skills, and I'm going to do that by first of all starting with what is at the heart of the doctoral researcher's skills problem. There's lots of things, I think, and I'm sure we could argue about this for a long time, but it's clear that transversal skills are very widely offered in all sorts of countries, but there's skepticism from some doctoral researchers about whether they're worthwhile. Employers either don't know or don't always state very clearly what they want from doctoral graduates, and universities aren't very good at finding out what employers want. Universities are not always aware of just how useful all their doctoral researchers could be outside academia. I think that came up very much in Nita's talk just now. Some supervisors see non-academic careers for doctoral researchers as inferior, so they don't encourage it. There's an argument, particularly from economists, about, do we have too many doctoral researchers who want to be academics and there aren't enough jobs, or they want to use their research and find that that's not possible. And also, we don't really assess transversal skills, which is kind of strange, really, that we don't do that. So some people have said, well, let's have different routes for different careers. So, I mean, there are already in some countries, certainly in the UK, we have so many different kinds of doctorates that every day I expect a new one to be added. So, you have professional doctorates, you have practice doctorates, you have, traditional doctorates, whatever those are. We have kind of practice-based ones and so on. But of course, if you simply divide by kind of people who definitely want to be academics and definitely don't, I think you can't really make that decision at the beginning. It's maybe that some candidates can do that, but not everybody knows at that point what they actually want to do. So, and professional doctorates tend to be part-time, and they're aimed at candidates already in employment, not people who are looking for employment. You can have separate routes within the traditional doctorate, but I suspect if you overemphasize transversal skills, you may lose those who really want to concentrate on their scientific and technical skills. The traditional doctorate also doesn't always provide a firm grounding, or even for all aspects of academic life. I don't know if you've ever looked at the Facebook group Reviewer 2 Must Be Stopped, which is ostensibly about peer review, but in fact is largely about life as a postdoc and a doctoral researcher in lots of different countries. It has 40,000 members, more than that now, because many of them have very hazy ideas about how even academic life works. And Sidolinska's work on doctoral holders in the Czech Republic who are working outside academia says identities and motivations of doctoral candidates can really affect job choice, with women in social science particularly likely to just choose from any well-paid professional job. If it's not academic, they don't mind. So it's obviously not a straightforward process. So what skills might be needed by doctoral graduates post-pandemic? I won't read all of these out because it will take too long. These are not necessarily things that employers would come up with, although some of them are. But, making decisions in context of uncertainty and leadership. I think it's not just management that's important, but also leadership, because some of these people will become leaders in their time. And that's something we don't always spend a lot of time focusing on. Using different kinds of knowledge, able to work with different disciplines and specialisms on common goals, being very climate aware, working in diverse teams and groups, legitimating and applying academic expertise, and so on. And particularly, I think that it's important that doctoral researchers also can promote some understanding of different disciplines that they happen to have worked in, or acting as public intellectuals. I think those are things that we forget at our peril. They used to be important. I think they're less important now. So how can doctoral alumni in jobs outside academia help? We did this recently at Royal Holloway. We had some workshops where we brought people who were not in academic jobs back to talk about what they did. We had an arts humanities one, which included people working in museums, archives, TV production, as a writer and entrepreneur, and somebody who worked with multinational phone companies. They stressed their voluntary work experience, learning new skills, like explaining history to young children, using their pre-doctoral experience, for example, in TV production, becoming experts, I love this one, becoming experts in interpreting deep knowledge, and also being able to operate at a senior level in organisations, which many doctoral researchers aren't very good at. Developing networks, I think, also is something that universities can help with, and things like LinkedIn are useful. And alumni can make a very good audience online for a 3-minute thesis or general audience posters. And for that, online posters are great because they don't have to be present at the event, and you can simply send them a big file or access to it where they can look at them. So that's quite helpful. I think there's also an issue about how we find out from the doctoral researchers themselves what skills they've already got and what other gaps are. This is just one of quite a few different frameworks. I think this one is slightly more too complicated, and I think it's good, but I think it's very focused on research skills. I think Eurodocs has got one which is simpler and better, but you can develop your own. But what's interesting, I think, is actually that I think it would be good if universities develop their own skills needs analysis tool. A lot of universities already have that for research skills, but they don't necessarily have it for transversal skills, because I think that way you actually get to find out what the doctoral researchers themselves think. And sometimes having something that's relatively simple, that just not only looks at what they've learned from their formal education, but also from past work experiences, whether part-time, full-time, or wherever they were, and also notes the skill gaps. If you do that and develop that, then you begin to indicate the kind of professional development that's needed, because I think different people do need different things. And as Nada's just pointed out, there are, particular things like collaboration and project management, which employers feel haven't really been developed well. And there are lots of other things like teamwork, customer relationships, data analysis, marketing expertise. There are so many things that it's kind of quite hard to kind of get to grips with all of those. But I think what's interesting also is that many of those skills have been taught for years in schools, never mind universities. So actually something really is going wrong if by the time they've been through all that, they still don't have things like good communication skills, which some employers say that's the case. I think the other thing that can be done, which I also think is really important, is to work with employers on skills for doctoral employment. I think a lot of universities have good regional employer networks and do knowledge transfer with them, and they've got contacts who could be really useful for them to learn more about what is it that employers require of doctoral graduates. And I think sometimes they do that for STEM students, but they don't do it for the others, thinking that they're part of a different kind of cohort. But I don't necessarily think that they are. So using those networks, encouraging employers who employ doctoral researchers to visit universities to give talks. Doctoral students, I think, are often, and doctoral graduates are seen as a threat if nobody else in the organisation has a PhD. See, I noticed in Nada's sample that a lot of the employers they talked about had PhDs, but in some countries that's not the case, that very few people have. So bringing someone with a PhD into your company, if no one else has got a PhD, is seen as quite potentially divisive or elitist. Some feel that they're too academic, that they're too cautious, they can't make quick decisions, they can't write simple reports, they can't pitch ideas to an audience or deal with customers, and they're also more expensive than bachelor's degrees. So that there is a lot of work to do, and I think it does vary by labour market. And obviously large organisations and small and medium enterprises have very different recruitment approaches, so that needs to be taken into account. And I think the other two of you both said already, but encouraging things like placements and internships as well as voluntary work experience is vital. But the other thing that we found was an issue, and I suspect this is an issue in quite a lot of universities, is that university careers officers, particularly if they're busy, they like to give exactly the same advice on careers to doctoral researchers as they do to bachelor students. And actually, I think that's really, really unhelpful. And we've been arguing for years that that's not helpful. I think we finally made some progress on that, and somebody's been allocated who actually is learning a lot about what doctoral researchers do. Because if you just see them as kind of more expensive undergraduates, then that's completely inappropriate. And I think, as Nida's talk shows, that there are actually lots of things that doctoral researchers can do and doctoral candidates that other people can't. So those are just some kind of ideas about things that you can do. I'm sure there are lots of other things, but I think it's just worth remembering that employers have been saying for about 3 centuries that what comes out of education is not what they want. So I think the employers have a responsibility to articulate that better, and also to make clear their contribution to training, because we can't do everything that's needed for doctoral researchers to succeed in non-academic jobs whilst they're actually doing their research. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rose. You did something that I thought was impossible. That you give us a presentation of such a rich written material in a very, very short time. Thank you, all 3 of you, for excellent presentations. I suggest that all 3 speakers now turn on their cameras, because we can start with the discussion. We do have not as much time as I thought that we will have, but we do have a good 10 minutes for discussion. So there is one question to go. I think that questions you ask ourselves were really valuable already, and we could discuss upon them. And obviously the main, I would say, topic was how to achieve a balance in responsibilities and autonomy of the university, balance between different types of skills. So I wanted to ask something that is already written here as a question from one of the participants. So I would really like you all to comment on how far we can go with this adaptation and this new transferable skills, generic knowledge in provision of that, and not to harm the doctoral education as we knew it until now. So we cannot probably just add and add and add things. Hans already mentioned that in his presentation. There must be some sort of limit. We have to, maybe we are risking something when adding the responsibilities of doctoral students, their mentors, university as a whole. So can you please answer this first question? Whoever wants to start.
I can maybe answer. It's not our study, but from the evidence that's coming from the literature. First of all, in terms of time to degree, when there's the literature that compared doctoral students who participated in career development activities to those who did not participate in career development activities, to see if there would be any differences in their research output and in their times to degree. So what we know from those studies that were done in the US, and I think there's some evidence coming from the UK as well, that there's no effect on time to degree. So they don't graduate in, it doesn't take them longer to get their degrees, and they don't publish less. And what's really interesting is that if there is an impact, it's the other way around. They publish more. So second thing that I wanted to say is we know from the literature with the collaborations with industry that up to a certain point, collaboration with industry is a booster for research output because they have new ideas. They have more funding, and also some evidence coming from supervisors themselves. I think it's coming from Australia. They said that those who participated in internships, for instance, the doctoral students who participated in internships, they have boosted their competencies in research. So that's why I completely understand the concerns about how far should we go, or because there's some time that needs to be allocated to research, but I don't think that it's necessarily bad for research, because when they do collaborations, they increase also their research skills.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much, Neda.
So I would say there's an important difference whether you design it as an explicit training, and that's where I would be careful,
Mm-hmm.
or whether you do it in the structure of the doctoral projects. And for example, we see, in particular, of course, at the technical universities, you have a lot of collaborations projects with industry always. Then we have these kind of really interdisciplinary networks where there's a technology issue and an awareness issue and people work together. Then you have these complex European projects, for example, where there is automatically an international and sometimes also an intersectoral experience. So these kind of things, I think they are extremely helpful, and they help candidates to leave the ivory tower of I'm sitting at my desk and think and write. And this is extremely positive, and this can only have positive impacts on productivity and so on. The point where I think one has to be careful is really asking the other side, what do you wish us to do? And then they say, okay, we would have some more table dancing competency. And then you say, okay, then we introduce in our doctoral school a table dancing course, and then our industry partners will be satisfied from now on. And I think this is something which I see sometimes the tendency to go in this direction just to satisfy everyone and to get a good response. And I think this is harmful and this is dangerous, but not this making the project itself richer. This is only helpful.
Now you're answering partly the other part of this question, how to approach employers when planning courses and transferable skills in a sensible way. There are probably, okay, I will not answer questions myself. Maybe Rosemary would like to add something to this big question.
I think one of the things that we need to take into account is that doctoral researchers may already have some skills that are useful in the workplace when they start their doctorate. I mean, that's probably less likely if people are very young, but in some fields like social science, there's a lot of mature students coming in who already have had different kinds of jobs. So actually using that experience. So the example I was giving of someone who'd done a lot of work on television production before she became a doctoral researcher, then used that after she graduated to create a whole it was a kind of self-employed career, but it was clearly very successful. But also, I think sometimes employers forget that people can develop things when they actually enter the arena, but also voluntary. It's not, internships are important, but also voluntary work. I mean, I'm not suggesting that people should do lots of it, but so the person that we had at our Arts Humanities event who said that he now specializes in kind of teaching history to young children. So when the first time he was asked at a local museum to take some children around, the talk he gave was miles above their head, but he learned how to do that through that voluntary work, and that's now the job that he holds. So there's often things that you can do yourself. So I think it's important to have a set of different mechanisms, and also to remind them they already come with some useful skills. We kind of de-skill them along the way in some respects, and we've got to watch that. But certainly, external stakeholders. I mean, history really does show that employers have always been moaning about that. What people come out of education, whether it's elementary schools or universities. So it's part of their kind of raison d'être, I guess.
Thank you, Rosemary. As we have only 4 minutes, that is not good for me to ask many questions. Maybe we could use this last few minutes just for each of you to give some final thought on the subject. I think that would be very helpful for our audience, and take into consideration that in our audience are people who are certainly interested in big philosophical questions, but also practitioners, people who have to deal with practical issues of offering transferable skills in their schools. Maybe just really each of you just 1 minute. Hans, will you start?
Yeah, so maybe one thing is that we observe a huge variety in doctoral projects these days, and this is helpful for this kind of skills. But it's also a bit dangerous because there is this trend of self-intensifying. So someone who is on an interdisciplinary project sees that interdisciplinary is important, and he looks for some interdisciplinary training. And those who are not, they don't even know that this is something important. So that's exactly the point, I think, where the universities have to provide some guidance, not putting a general pattern on everyone, but really look where are deficiencies and what can we do to reduce those.
Thank you very much, Hans. Neda?
I guess I'll highlight the two skills that are really important: collaboration and teamwork, and project management. And I think that they are important for researchers and those researchers who will work outside of university or become science professionals alike.
Thank you very much. And it was really nice to see that the importance of these skills are seen as crucial for both students themselves and employers as well. Thank you very much, Neda. And Rosemary?
Yes, I think something that's really important to remember is that doctoral graduates are going to be citizens as well as workers. I think that we have to address the citizenship aspect of it, because I think there's lots of things they can do, from citizen science to kind of working in lifelong learning contexts in their spare time and helping people. So just remember that that's the other side of their life. And I think at least it's balanced, because otherwise I think there's a danger that we throw in so many skills in terms of their work life that we forget they're also going to live in wider society and they have a role to play there. So we need to emphasize the public good sometimes as well as the private gain.
Such a nice thought for the end of this conversation, not to think about transferable skills only in thinking about employability, but in order to serve our purpose, to add something to public good. Thank you very much to all three speakers, also to numerous participants who are still with us. I'm just saying goodbye. I'm inviting you to leave now this session, to have a short break, and after a few minutes there will be carousel discussion. So it was my pleasure to chair this plenary session, and see you soon. Bye.